Pearson Sharp. Filming out in Southern California, you'd think it'd be toasty. But it's chilly. Of course, I'm not going to tell you folks up north what it actually is down here. You'd laugh at me. Things have calmed down somewhat in our nation since the election, and it looks like we're turning a corner to a more sane and reasonable level of governance for the time being, at least for the next 4 years, but nothing's guaranteed, and that's the point of this video. I'm a naturally cautious person, and I like to be prepared for whatever situation I'm going into, which has made the last 4 years really tough. It felt like everything, everywhere was falling apart, all at the same time. And how can one person prepare to handle that? Well, my family and I, we did our best and we learned a lot. And now after the election, it feels like a big weight has been lifted off of our shoulders and we can breathe a little easier. And so I wanted to talk about what that means and talk about some of the things that we learned and how preparing for what seemed like an imminent disaster changed our lives, probably forever. Because if we as a nation have learned anything over the last few years, it's that the government cannot be relied on to keep us safe or even function properly. In fact, most days the government is openly your enemy. Trump has changed the equation, but there's still a villainous swamp of power-hungry fascists in Washington who absolutely hate we the people. And they aren't going to stop just because the orange man is back in town. Which means at the end of the day, we are on our own. At least that's the best case scenario. We hope we're on our own. Worst case, the government comes knocking. And then begins the worst day of your life. Maybe the last. For those of you who don't know what that means, try reading Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn, or watch my last video about Brian Malinowski. In any case, I can promise you that neither you nor anyone else, including me, are prepared for the nightmare waiting for us if the government ever comes knocking. The proud men and women of January 6th sadly received a small preview of exactly what can happen. And as awful as their treatment has been, as political prisoners of war, there's still a reluctantly free media and still a few good leaders to keep them out of what would otherwise be a modern American gulag. Who knows where they'd be right now if President Trump hadn't taken back the White House. So yeah, we hope we're on our own if things get ugly and the system fails. But in either scenario, you're going to need to be prepared for the consequences when you have no one else to turn to and you need help. That could mean food, it could mean water, it could mean medical supplies. Whatever it is, you will be responsible for providing, no one else. And men, as providers for your family, this is your responsibility. If you have a wife and kids and you're not taking this seriously, then you don't deserve to lead your family. You are the protector. And providing is essential for protection. Providing from hunger, from thirst, from disease or injury. Men, you are the front line for your family, and if you're not already, then it's time to start doing your duty. What does that mean? We all saw what happened in 2020. The government used a phony excuse to drum up as much fear and demoralize the people as much as they possibly could. This is Marxism 101. And sadly, for most of America, that worked. I saw a lot of people going to grocery stores looking panicked, panic buying supplies, and people glued to their TVs, waiting for King Fauci to tell them what to do next. And incredibly, when he told people what to do, they actually did it. People didn't leave their homes. They wore masks. They took experimental and even deadly, we'll call it medication for the sake of YouTube. And millions of people are suffering the consequences from those unproven medications to this day. 2020 was a very different time for me and my family. We weren't worried. We weren't scared. We went out and we lived our normal lives, as much as possible anyway, with all the masked up freaks out there screaming in our faces about imaginary social distancing. And in case you missed it, Fauci actually came out and admitted there was no science behind any of this. He just made it up. You don't believe me? I'll link it in the description. In any case, we weren't worried and we weren't scared. Why? Because we were prepared. We were ready. We had what we needed: food, water, medicine, toilet paper. We weren't part of the rush to buy essential supplies, and there's no reason you should be either. I keep plenty of food and water and other supplies here at the house. That includes guns and ammo, which I consider part of your essential supplies. Now, I'm not gonna go over my gear. I don't need to share everything. There's lots of videos out there and gear lists and stuff, but this is something that you should include in your equation, especially as men. I'd say it's essential for women as well. We're both protectors of our family, and our children rely on us. We are the first and last line of defense for them. That's primarily a man's role. And if you're not sure why, this probably isn't the channel for you. In any case, not having enough supplies to see us through a government shutdown was never a concern. And by the way, what a wonderful thing that would be. A government shutdown. Can you imagine? Everyone acts like it's the end of the world. But do you know how little we actually need our government in our day-to-day lives? We don't need the government for anything. All they need to do is protect us when a foreign nation invades. That's it. If we could take over for roads and transportation and education and everything else, imagine how much better the whole country would run. That'd be a dream come true if the government would shut down and actually stay down. Oh no, please don't shut the government down. Whatever will we do? Whatever the hell we want, that's what. Which does not include lining up for Fauci passports to prove that we were obedient little sheep and did what the government told us to do. That's what I worried about in 2021, not whether or not we had enough food at home. Again, the government created the problem at every step of the way, and we were left to figure it out. Or wait for the government to tell us how it was up to us to fix the problem that they created in the first place. Talk about asinine. But that comes back to the point of the video. What do you do if you don't have one of these handy-dandy commie passports? These little red books, and you're not allowed to go get food from the store. Luckily, that didn't happen this time. But it did happen in other parts of the world, like in China and Australia and New Zealand, where you actually had to prove that you took the medication in order to go outside, to leave your home and do normal activities, like going to the grocery stores or non-essential restaurants. So what do you do then? Are you going to starve? Are you going to cave in and obediently line up like a little sheep? Or are you prepared? Well, your answer to that question tells you what your next step needs to be. And being prepared is not some fringe activity in case you thought it was. According to recent surveys, over 30% of Americans practice prepping in one way or another. And I think that scares the government because it means tens of millions of Americans don't need them and know that they don't need them. We don't depend on the government for our survival, and they hate that. But the goon-tunes, no knocking on your door isn't the only threat. Armed patrols marching through your neighborhood are still a very real possibility. And after the death of St. George the Druggie, we saw countless BLM rioters destroying entire cities. Again, I blame the government. These riots were instigated by our own government working with the legacy media. In fact, as Doge and Elon Musk just showed us, a lot of it was paid for by our own government through organizations like USAID. This is how communism happens, and we saw it right before our eyes. What do we do about it? Well, that depends on your proximity to what happened. If it was in your neighborhood, you probably either got the hell out of Dodge or you tried to protect your home. If it was something that just was happening on your TV somewhere else, then you probably made sure your supplies were topped off, the guns were loaded, and the car was gassed up and ready to go. Again, none of us, at least none of us sane Americans, want anything like this to happen. I am not some armchair Rambo looking for a fight. Those are the guys who die badly. I cannot tell you how much I fervently hope and pray daily that all my prep, all my expensive gear is just a waste of money and that none of this is ever needed. I pray to God that I'm pissing away money on these things and that they just rot in a drawer forever. I'm not a commando. I'm scared to death of ever having to pull any of this stuff out. That terrifies me, not only for my sake, but for my family's sake. What happens to my little girls if I get shot? But when crowds of rioters come to our street or the government locks us down and tells us when we're allowed to beg for scraps, I do not want to be in the position of needing anyone else to come to my rescue, because odds are no one else is coming. Just look at North Carolina, at California, at Hawaii. The government is not our friend and they do not help us. But they'll help the illegals. They'll give them $59 million a week, no problem, but nothing for American citizens. And again, that's the point of this video. And above all else, first and foremost in this equation of preparation, you need to get your faith in order. Wherever you are with God right now, you need to make sure that He is first and foremost in your life. Our country is in the state that it's in right now because we as a nation have turned our backs on God. And so He's taken His hands off our leaders, off our governance, and we're being left to our own devices, which are the devices of the devil. And as you can see for yourself, the pain and destruction we're suffering because we thought we didn't need God. Study your Bible, worship with your family, and make sure that if the lights go out, and friends, they always go out, you know where you stand with your Lord. This is probably going to be a two-part video. There's just too much to cover here. But the bottom line is that if you know anything about history, then you know this shit happens all the time. The peace that we've enjoyed in America for the last 80 years is unheard of in the history of the world. That kind of safety and prosperity just doesn't happen, certainly not for very long. And look, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I'm afraid that we're coming to the end of Pax Americana. President Trump has managed to hit the reset button on the doomsday clock, and we have a little reprieve. And I would love to be wrong about this and see America resurge from the depravity that's been consuming us over the last decade. But either way, President Trump, he's just one man. He can only do so much, and he only has 4 years. The future is uncertain. How you respond to it, that's up to you.